Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is actually going to be sort of a explanation video on why I had to have surgery on my nose in 2016. I basically have had so many people in real life and on the internet and social media message me and comment on things saying that why did I have to have it, and that it should not have happened. I even have people telling me that my surgeon and my doctor should be in jail because he shouldn't have done it and things like that. So I wanted to sit here and explain why I had to have it, because it's sort of out of the blue, explaining why I had to have surgery on my nose, and sort of without actually having a proper injury. Most people assume that when you have surgery on your face, it's cosmetic. It was not a cosmetic surgery. It can be used for one if you have an extremely crooked nose, but usually they do the rhinoplasty for that reason. So if you want to know why I had to have it, I'm going to go right back from the beginning of my story, which is basically from the time I was born. This is my story, and let's get into it. A bit of a long video, I got no idea, I'm just sitting here winging it, so go grab a snack, a drink or something, sit down, and we'll go through everything. So my story starts pretty much from the time I was born. I was born in 1998. I was born on September 10, but I wasn't due until I think October 18th or something like that. So I was born a little bit early. I was very, very small and I was slightly underdeveloped. My gross motor skills have not developed properly, meaning I have very, very poor balance and hand-eye coordination. So I have very, very difficulties walking up and down stairs. I have very bad difficulties riding a bike. I can't really stand on one foot. Although my hand-eye coordination, in terms of just everyday things, so walking, jumping, riding a bike, things like that, is pretty bad. I am okay at sports. I am excellent at archery, considering my coordination is really bad. So yeah, I was born very early. I was in the hospital for I think 17 or 18 days before I came home and things like that. So that is where I began. I had very bad issues with breathing when I was first born, but that was because of my lungs, because my lungs weren't developed, etc, etc. So basically, for my first 2 years of my life, my parents had to sleep with me sitting up. The first night my mum brought me home from the hospital, I slept 45 minutes. Now you compare me to my brother who was in his room. He was born in 2001. I know every baby's different and we're different genders, we're different everything, but he would sleep, even my mum and dad I think brought him home after 5 days I think. He slept pretty much through the whole night. Like, he slept in 3-hour intervals. I slept in 10-minute intervals. I never slept, and they basically had to sleep with me up on their chest, my head up on their shoulder, so I could breathe. I was like 3 weeks old and you could hear me snorting and sniffing and trying to breathe. No one knew what was wrong. They thought it was just because I was so underdeveloped. My nose still had a lot of mucus in it, so that's what everyone chalked it up to. And life went on. I personally don't ever remember not having to take allergy medication. So pretty much from as early as I can remember, I would take Claritine liquid syrup, because I couldn't have the tablets. The tablets had dairy in it and they did figure out I was dairy intolerant, so I was not able to take the tablets. So I would have some of the Claritine liquid, and I had to have it mixed with a soft drink or something, because if I had it straight it would also make me throw up. So I had it only was just a medicine glass full, so that's just one mouthful, one shot, and it's done. So it was enough to dilute it like that. So I was always taking allergy medicine and a steroid nose spray. So I don't ever remember not using them. Even at the first house I was in when my mum and dad had me, I remember it there. So I was 3.5 when we moved. So yeah. And basically from there on, my nose almost got worse and worse. I was diagnosed with asthma, I think when I was 4. And I always remember having to go to doctors, specialists. I always remember having to have x-rays on my chest, always having those breathing tests done, the respiratory tests. I don't ever remember not having that, and it got to the point where I had to basically use my inhaler every time I got up and moved. And I was not overweight at this time. I was slightly thicker than other kids, but I was nowhere near what you would call overweight. Now, I don't know if you guys know, but I was also born with a very underactive thyroid. That is why I am so short. That is why I find it very, very hard to lose weight. That's why I gain weight very easy, and I also have other issues. So if you guys would like me to do a video on living with Hashimoto's, then I definitely will, because a lot of people sort of say it's the easy disease, and it's not by any means. So, and a lot of people really don't know either. They're very uneducated about it. So I would also like to do a video on it as well. Anyway, back to my story. So I pretty much, long story short, have always had breathing issues. Now, fast forward to high school. So this is year 7, so 7th grade for us in Australia. We only go to 2 schools in our life, unless you actually change schools. We only go to 2, primary school and high school, and some kids go to early starters, but I didn't. So fast forward to high school, year 7, it was a new environment and everything else, but I found my body handled it really, really well. I was always still using the same, I had switched nasal spray because my body had become immune to it from me using it for like 11 years. And I had switched the allergy liquid to the tablet form because I could tolerate it then. And basically my dairy intolerance had gone away as well, and my asthma had gone away by then. Everything cleared up. But fast forward to about, I want to say, August of year 9 for me. So this was August of 2013. And my nose got really, really bad again. So there were several things that happened. The first one is I was switched from using my over-the-counter nasal spray to using, now I don't mean a decongestant, I mean like an allergy hay fever one. I was switched from using an over-the-counter one to a prescription one called Avamis. My dad uses that now, and he said it has worked amazingly well for him. He pretty much has not had a single issue since he started using it nearly 7 years ago. Me, on the other hand, it was almost the exact opposite. Within about 2 weeks of me using it, I was having constant nosebleeds. The lining of my nose always felt like it was burning, like it was on fire. My nose was really, really dry. In one way, I was no longer having runny noses. I was no longer sneezing. I was no longer having that. But I remember I was sitting in class one day doing an exam. I think, yeah, it would have been our half yearly. So I was doing an exam, writing my essay, classes all quiet, thought my nose was running, wiped my nose on my sleeve. I know that is gross, but I knew my jumper was getting washed that day, and it was the middle of winter, so come on. Wiped my nose on my sleeve and it was totally fine. Knew it was clear. My jumper was bright green so I could see if there was blood on it, and it was clear, so it was fine. And then instantly I just had blood I sneezed, instantly just had blood pouring out my nose. Now, we are not sure if that was the first time that my septum ruptured or if I just had a really big nosebleed, because now that I thought about it, it's very, very similar, almost identical to the nosebleed I had when my septum ruptured. I will talk about that later. But yeah, so I just had this major nosebleed. I actually had to stop. I had to leave the room and I had to sit that essay again because the teacher couldn't even mark what I had written because there was so much blood on my desk that you just couldn't even read the paper I'd written. So sometimes if an emergency happens, the teachers will give you a passing mark, but they will still like write comments and things on what you have already written. They couldn't even do that because you couldn't read it. So my whole desk was just not soaked to the point where it was dripping, but it was everywhere. And it was terrible. I had to get a new school shirt. I had to throw that shirt out. It nearly had to throw my skirt out. Luckily my skirt was such dark green that you didn't know. I wore a uniform, by the way. My skirt was such a dark green that it was lucky that after a couple of washes you couldn't even tell. So that was pretty terrible, and so that cleared up. That was the first thing. The nose spray, I think that's basically what caused my issues to begin with. And then about a week later, I got a really, really bad cold. And like to the point where I was like bedridden. It was probably more the flu. I was bedridden for about 3 days, couldn't go to school, and I started using what they call the decongestant nose sprays. Now here in Australia you can just get them over the counter off the shelf at your chemist's. Pretty sure in the US they have to be given via a prescription. I could be wrong, don't quote me on that, but just from what I've seen, people on Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, that's just what it seems like. So we always had one in the house for emergencies. They basically will force your nose to open so you can breathe. We used to just use them when our nose was absolutely terrible. Most of the time it was my brother that used it. But I kept that bottle in my room and used the whole thing over the space of 3 days, pretty much. It was about half empty. You shouldn't use it for more than 3 days at a time. That cold started me off using it between 4 and 6 times a day for 4.5 years. They cost $12 a bottle, or sometimes, no, $8 for the refill, because I would just keep using the pump, because what's the point in throwing away the pump when you just buy the refill? For 4.5 years. Every week I got to the point where I was sometimes using 2 bottles a week. I knew it was bad. My doctor knew about it 110%. My family always told me nearly every time I was seen using it that I had to stop using it. And I knew I had to stop using it, but I couldn't because I just couldn't breathe. It got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to wait. This was about year 11. I thought, okay, I am going to wait and I will get off the sprays once I'm done with high school. Because my symptoms started to play up and I needed my spray, it got to the point where my nose would close up, my ears would block to the point where I could not hear anything. I was in the middle of my maths exam at the end of year 10 and my spray was empty. And I was crossing my fingers, hoping that I could have waited till after the exam to buy it. It was only a 3-hour exam, so I thought that, okay, I'll get through it. If I had a sneezing fit or just sneezed once, that set off my symptoms even quicker. So guess who sneezed? Because everyone had deodorant on, the big sprays, the cans, disgusting stuff. And guess who had a sneezing fit? And it got to the point where at the end of the exam I could not hear what my teachers were talking. Apparently someone's desk behind me fell over and made a huge noise throughout our hall at school. Everyone flinched. I didn't even know the desk fell over. I just literally could not hear a thing at all. And since that incident my ears have been very, very sensitive to noises and just sensitive in general. So we're not sure if that blockage caused a lot of damage, just a lot of pressure in my head. But that was really excruciating. And also at the time in year 9, I was diagnosed with several allergies of things that I was not allergic to prior. So because of my brother, we had allergy testing done approximately every 2 years on me. He's different. On me it was approximately every 2 years because you can develop an allergy to anything at any time. There was someone on Facebook several years ago who her 97-year-old mother suddenly died from an allergic reaction and the only thing she'd eaten that day was prawns. And they basically said she had symptoms that matched an allergic reaction to a T and she just developed an allergy suddenly at 97. So I had the allergy testing done. It was actually done on the arm, the spot where I got my tattoo right now, so oops. I was going to get a tattoo on this forearm, but I thought if it needs to keep happening, maybe I shouldn't. Anyway, so I had that done and it actually showed I was allergic to peanuts, which I had sort of thought that I was developing an allergy because every time I ate peanut butter, my mouth and lips would go really numb, and that is a sign. So that, peanuts, avocado, which was surprising because the whole summer before I was using avocado as butter. Instead of butter, I was using avocado mixed up with a little bit of olive oil, lemon juice and salt and pepper. That was what I was using instead of butter or margarine, whatever the heck you use. So that was what I was using, and I had no reaction to it. We thought it was what was playing up on my nose, because an allergic reaction doesn't just have to be bloating, sneezing, coughing, and things like that. An allergic reaction can be a rash, hives, extreme like sweats all of a sudden, so like a real hot flush. Doesn't mean if you have hot flushes you are allergic to something. You have to be properly tested. It can be eczema. My brother's got complete eczema all the time. Asthma is a very, very large sign. A lot of people will treat their children's asthma and find it gets worse and worse over time. They keep treating the asthma, but they don't ever test for allergies. That is the issue. I don't know about just in Australia, but I've noticed that worldwide, so many people won't get their kids tested for allergies, and dust and things like that is a very, very big trigger. Dairy is actually one of the biggest triggers for allergic asthma attacks. Now that doesn't mean every child that has asthma is allergic to something. It's just things scientists and immunologists have found that link together. It's like dairy intolerances have linked together with gluten intolerances. If you tend to be intolerant to dairy or not tolerate dairy as well as normal people, you'll find that every now and then you will have a sensitivity to gluten as well. So my nose just progressively got worse and worse and worse over time. It got to the point where I was using those sprays 6 and 7 times a day. If I didn't get to it, I was very agitated. I would get very, very hot. Basically, I would have withdrawal symptoms, and I couldn't breathe, and I was absolutely terrified of the day I would have had to have given it up. And eventually it just got to the point where we were like, okay, we need to do something about it. Okay, so fast forward to early June 2016. This was the year I graduated high school. I was preparing to graduate. I was preparing to do my high school certificate, which that is the equivalent to your high school diploma. I'm pretty sure in the UK it's your GCSE, things like that, your major exams you take to leave school. Well, that is what I was planning to do. Now, I don't know about every school. I know some schools even in Australia are different. We had our graduation first and then the HSC exams. So I graduated September 22nd, 2016. Anyway, came early June and my mum and my brother and I gave me a break from studying for once, and I was playing a game of Monopoly with my family, my brother and my mum, and my brother leant over and like pinched my nose and sort of like dragged his fingers down my nose because I took a sip of his drink accidentally thinking it was mine, and because we had the same color cup. Anyway, a couple of days later, or 24 hours later, I came home from school and I was actually sitting at my desk filming a makeup tutorial. Now, I actually did upload that look that I did. If I can find it, I will link it down below. Don't know if I deleted it. I haven't deleted many videos, so I don't think I have. There was in between two of the segments, there was a major like hour and a half break in between them because I was in the middle of, I think I had just done my foundation routine, so my foundation, concealer and powder, and I was about to put my bronzer on and my nose started bleeding. I noticed a little bit of blood just in the inside of my nose. I think I sneezed. No, I just breathed. I just breathed normally. Like I might have sighed and exhaled a bit too hard through my nose. And I noticed a bit of blood on the top of just under my nose. So I grabbed a little cotton tip and wiped it away. The instant I wiped that away, blood just gushed out my nose. Now, I went through 3 boxes of tissues, a beach towel, so just a towel we take to the beach, my school shirt, which was white by the way, and nearly got some on the carpet in my room. My nose bled for about 40 minutes. It was just gushing. It was not painful, which was surprising. Everyone was asking me, does it hurt? Does it hurt? The answer was no. It was probably one of the least painful things I've ever had. And it got to the point where my blood was coming out so much, I was bleeding clots out my nose. It was mainly bleeding out this side. This side, it was a little bit, but it was all coming out this side mainly. And my mum actually called my doctor's office wondering if she should take me to the hospital because it was literally out of the blue. I felt completely fine, so we weren't sure if maybe I had a brain tumor. If, you know, you start to think the worst. Had I had a head injury and not known it? Had I been poisoned by something and not known it? Had I been bitten by something? Did I end up developing some disorder? Like, was I suddenly so anemic and have a nosebleed, I'm bleeding to death? Things like that. Everything possible started running through my mind. My first thought was, oh my god, there's something wrong with my brain. Because I know that nosebleeds are very common with brain tumors and things like that, just because of the pressure. And I had been experiencing some headaches and like slight wooziness and things in the couple of weeks beforehand. I realised now that was probably the really big issues with me being addicted to the nose sprays. Anyway, I went to the doctor's the next day, didn't even go to school, and he said that my septum had ruptured. The part here that goes way up in your nose that divides your left and your right nasal cavity, my septum ruptured. Now, he had the camera up to about here and said it was there, so probably roughly here, about where the bridge of my nose is, a little bit higher, that is basically where my septum ruptured. And that is what caused the major nosebleed. Clots happen when you bleed very, very heavily, so that is why. And I was told to take it very, very carefully. I was given just some extra iron tablets to take for the next couple of days to build up my iron again, because we showed my doctor photos of how much I bled. That's why my mum called my doctor, just to make sure I wasn't bleeding to death. Because it just kept coming and coming and didn't stop. I was told not to take a shower, not to have an extremely hot bath. I was basically just to be in there for a couple of minutes, wash my body. For the next like 3 days I just used dry shampoo, and I was to be closely monitored. I went to school the day after that. My teachers had been notified and everyone was looking out just to make sure my nose didn't bleed again, because it could have. If it ruptured, then there's a chance it could have ruptured lower down, higher up, and it could have happened again. And so my doctor said it would heal itself, it would close up and things like that. So it wasn't painful. It wasn't painful, I have to say that. So it wasn't that traumatizing, because it just wasn't painful at all. It was just blood coming out my nose. I'm not traumatized by that sort of stuff, so I wasn't worried about it. And because my septum had ruptured, my doctor decided to send me to have a CT scan done, just to make sure that I didn't have any more abnormalities and ruptures anywhere else, because he could find the one here, but he didn't have the equipment to full on shove a camera right up my nose. So he sent me for a CT and x-rays on my face, which I had them done, and sent me to a specialist as well. So our specialist, his offices are just at our local hospital. We went, and basically my septum was fully zigzagged through my whole entire face. My whole septum. This part here was zigzagged through my whole nose. If you count the width of my nose as 100%, my septum was thickened and in a zigzag. So basically my septum was twice as thick as a normal one, and so it was closing off my airways. And not only that, the little airbags you have in your nose, which are called your turbinates, all 3 sets of mine were extremely swollen all the time. So partially because I was on those nose sprays. So I had my first appointment with him on the 19th of September, he told me to completely cold turkey cut the nose sprays. So I did. In his office, I pulled the spray out of my bag and chucked it in the bin. That was the last one I bought. That was the last one I used. We have not had another one in this house since, although I must say, I'm pretty sure my mum has addicted herself to them. She started to, pretty much within a month of me having surgery, she started to be using them all the time. And I don't know if it is because she wanted to copy me, if she wanted something to actually be wrong with her, if she wanted attention, I don't know, but I just noticed she started using them a lot and she went through a few very quickly. But they are quite dangerous. They do say don't use for more than 3 days. And so he told me to cut them cold turkey, and I did. And it was probably the hardest 2 weeks of my life. I was told to go back and see him in 4 weeks from then, because it would have had enough time for me to get over the addiction plus all the swelling to go down, and he would have reevaluated me for surgery. So I got off those sprays, and the first week was probably one of the hardest weeks of my life. I missed out on doing our scavenger hunt for year 12. Now, if you are in Australia and you do your scavenger hunt for year 12 scav night, you pretty much know it's almost like a rite of passage graduating high school. So I felt pretty upset that I didn't get to do it because I was so excited for it. I didn't end up doing it. I missed out on a bit of school. Like, I only had like a week and a half left, but I still missed out on like the rest of that week. I think I saw him on the Tuesday, and I missed out on the school the rest of that week just trying to get over it. We found decongestant tablets that I could take to replace them because they are non-addictive, so they helped so much. They did reduce some of the swelling, so it made my recovery bearable. But it wasn't just the not being able to breathe part. I was getting really, really hot. I was then shivering, but I was sweating. I was irritated. I couldn't sleep. I was fidgeting all the time. Basically, I was going through a full drug withdrawal. Now, my experience probably wouldn't have been as bad as someone who's trying to get over, say, heroin or something, but it was still a drug withdrawal. And to this day, it almost makes me emotional thinking about it, but to me, that's one of the best things I've ever achieved in my life, because I honestly don't know if I even would have been alive today had I kept using them. They were messing with my blood pressure. They were messing with the pressure in my brain. They were messing with my body's literal ability to absorb oxygen. I was living on like 37% oxygen and trying to live a normal life like someone who had 100. Now, most people were chalking my breathlessness up to me just being fat. That was not the case. I was literally being deprived of oxygen over a 6-month period of being monitored, still on the sprays. My levels had dropped from 50% to 37%, so it was literally killing me. It was literally killing me, and I wasn't fully aware of what it was doing to me until my surgeon explained it to me. My oxygen saturation was really bad. I was so tired all the time because I just couldn't breathe. I thought the sprays were helping me breathe. They were opening up my nose, but they were closing off everything else. And I was always using like the asthma inhaler, the one, not the actual medication one, but the one that you get over the counter. Ventolin is the one we have, and it just opens your airways up. I was using that all the time, just trying to breathe. And I got over the addiction. Like I said, to this day, it is still one of the best things I think I've ever done. I basically beat a drug addiction, and I did it without anyone's help. I needed the kick up the ass to do it. That wasn't fun, but I had to do it because my doctor could not have done surgery on me while I was still on those sprays because they were making my problems 10 times worse. So I go back to my appointment and after the month, and my issues were still the same. Wasn't as bad, probably only reduced by about 10%, but they were still there. I was still having the extremely painful swollen nose, the really bad tight sore throat, the inability to breathe, the inability to think, to just live a normal life. So he scheduled me in for surgery, and that is what happened. I had a septoplasty and turbinoplasty, double turbinoplasty actually. He reduced the size of my bottom set and my second set. The third set he can't actually get to unless they like full on crack your skull open, so that wasn't happening. But that doesn't make much of a difference because they are so high up in your skull, they are a lot smaller. So he reduced those, and to this day, having that surgery as well is one of the best decisions I ever made. It was my first big decision as an adult. And yes, although it didn't go quite according to plan in terms of me having the cardiac arrest and everything, I will link my surgery story down below as well. It was still one of the best things I've ever done. My recovery was so easy. There was almost no pain. I didn't get an infection. I didn't get sick. I was almost apart from being swollen and still having blood and discharge stuff coming out my nose, I felt completely normal within a week. Even within 20 minutes of waking up, I could tell how much of a difference it had made. I didn't swell up that much after the surgery compared to what some people do. My recovery was a lot easier because my surgeon did use atropine on me. That is the drug that caused my cardiac arrest. So it dilates your blood vessels so that you stop bleeding. It basically just makes you stop bleeding. They do give it to people who have severe injuries. If you've come in from a major car accident and your carotid artery is severed, things like that, they give it to you. And he uses that pretty much on everyone, whether you have your tonsils, because he was an ear, nose and throat specialist. So he uses it on pretty much everyone in his surgeries unless they have a specific reason not to use it. And that is what caused my cardiac arrest. I do have it on pretty much all of my files everywhere, that no one is to use it on me ever again. We were thinking of getting me a medical alert bracelet that says no atropine, or a necklace, just because if I'm in an emergency, it then will tell the doctors not to use it, because you never know. They revived me twice, and if I had gone a third time, we don't know if I would have come back, because the second time it took them longer to bring me back. And there are only so many times you can go into cardiac arrest in one day before they pull the plug. So we don't know if I have it again, if I will come back. So we've just decided not to use it. I'm not to have it used on me ever again. So the surgery was the best thing I have ever had done in my life. Now I am 110% better. I know I didn't do a 1 year update. I was going to, and then Christmas got in the way. I broke my foot, etc, etc. But now I am almost back to normal. I can still feel the damage in my lungs. Like, I always still feel like I can't fully take a deep breath like I used to be able to before I had the surgery. I often find I am quite short of breath. That is probably now just due to my weight. I have started exercising a lot more and things like that. Other lifestyle changes and things I will get into more in my next tea talk video. But there have been a few other symptoms and things I have had since, but I'll get into my in my next tea talk, because I don't think they're related to my nose being done at all. My nose is a little bit painful on the bridge of my nose sometimes, as in when I'm putting my foundation on. Sorry, there's dogs running up and down the street. So like when I'm putting my foundation on, bouncing it with my beauty blender, sometimes that hurts a little bit. It's not like fully painful, it's just like a dull pain that sometimes hurts. My throat every now and then gets really like funny. It's the only way I can describe it. I often wake up with a very sore throat because I had a student who put the tube in my throat when they put me to sleep, because the anesthetic that they use when they put you to sleep also stops you from breathing. So that's why they put you on a respirator and a breathing machine. They intubate you when you have surgery. That's what happens. And so I had a student do it, and they completely scratched my throat. My throat was actually the most painful part of my surgery recovery. My throat was bleeding for a couple of days. and because my body doesn't respond to painkillers at all, it was really fun. But I've noticed my voice has changed a little bit since. I don't know if you guys will be able to tell on camera or on the videos, because I was using my iPhone and now my camera, and they pretty much have the same sound. So I don't know if it sounds any different, but my workmates noticed, because I was working with them for like 10 months after the surgery. They noticed, I noticed in myself, my mum noticed as well, my dad, like family, people around me noticed that my voice is a little bit more raspy and things like that compared to what it used to be. It's not as smooth. I find I get a lot of real bad sore throats a lot, things like that, but really I am lucky because it's the best thing I have ever had done. I needed to have it done. I was literally slowly dying. It might have taken 20 years, but I was... And I know some people will say, oh, you're all dying from the second you're born, because you never know. But it was literally killing me. Being on the sprays was bad enough, but take me off the sprays, it still would have happened anyway. I was still not being able to breathe. I couldn't smell anything. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. And pretty much, I would say I wasn't fully recovered until the end of January. From mid-January until end of April, I slept like a log every single night. I got into bed and I was asleep probably within 2 minutes of being in bed every single night, no matter what time I went to bed. I felt amazing. And then all of a sudden my sleep has just gone on me again. I'm going to talk about that again in my next tea talk. My sleep has completely gone on me again. Now I don't know if that is because of my mum's new habits that she had, or if it was just something else, if it's my body getting back to its old habits again. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm going to talk about that more in depth in my next tea talk. I'm writing down notes and things because I want your guys' opinion. I want you to be able to help me. I have tried most things to help, by the way. But yeah, having the surgery was one of the best things I've ever done. So if you want me to answer any more questions about it, feel free to message me on Instagram, Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Snapchat. My Snapchat's down below. Twitter is probably the easiest place for you, unless you leave a comment on my videos. Twitter is the easiest place to actually contact me, not because of the updates from all the apps, just because I check my Twitter multiple times a day because I think it's great, whereas my Instagram, I'll go days without checking it and things like that. So that's why. Snapchat, I was thinking of actually turning my Snapchat private because I have a lot of weirdos add me, so still thinking about that. But I'm going to go get dinner. I'm going to film something else after this because I need a lot more talking videos filmed, and I thought that's going to be my main focus this weekend. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you have any more questions about my surgery, my recovery, why I had to have it, things like that, I will put them down below, or message me on Twitter. I would love to answer them. If you would still like a 1 year or 18-month update, I will still do that. Things like that. I would be more than welcome to do it. So it's what you guys want, and things that I thought were helpful. I just thought I had to sit down and explain it. I don't know if I explained it very well. I was going to write notes, but I am so tired. I started my college classes again this week, and it's been a full-on 3 days. So I'm gonna go get dinner. I'm going to like turn my brain off for a bit, and then I'll be back. So I'll see you in my next video, guys. Bye.